For the last 20 years, best-selling author Dr. Rita Louise has been shedding light on some of the world's most shrouded mysteries. A leading and respected medical intuitive, she is known for getting to the root of any problem. Today, Dr. Rita is going to share her discoveries with you. And now, where science and spirit meet.
Hello, and welcome to my spooky Halloween special. I'm Dr. Rita Louise, and happy Halloween to all of you. I was going to wear a costume today. All right, not really a costume. I was going to come as a conspiracy theorist tonight and have my official autograph collectible tinfoil hat that really did have a number of really wonderful names in the UFO community. Stan Freeman, Dr. Roger Lear, Richard Hoagland, Richard Hager, all kinds of people signed my hat. But when I put it on, it didn't work with the green screen. So it got removed. Now, granted, it would make things be spookier for anybody that might be watching. But I decided to go for the a little bit more professional because we're trying to bump up this show, figure out the technical issues, and have it be better. Better. We're into better. I'm into better. Anyway, I'm Dr. Rita Louise. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. I hope you're having a great Halloween. If you are here and are watching the show, I would love for you to post a hi or something in the chat room to let me know you're here. While you are watching the show, feel free to post your questions in the chat box, and I will answer your questions in due time. So I thought for this episode, in between doing sessions, because I know you all have secret questions that you want to get answers to. So we're going to get to that. I would share some of my favorite, I'm going to say ghosty stories, and I don't have tons of them, but I have enough. And so I think for me, one of the things, hey, Mr. Blind Dog, what's up to you? My first experience in a ghostly environment was the house I grew up in. The house had been built in 1898, and all right, I have a lot of brothers and sisters, and it seemed like we all knew about the dead guy that lived in the basement, but we never talked about him, which I thought was really interesting. And I had heard from Mr. Gruberg, the guy who owned the deli around the corner, that someone had been killed in the house. And I have to tell you, if somebody died in that house, it was the dead guy in the basement. And it was interesting because he didn't walk all around, so from a contemporary perspective and my new understanding of ghosts, it was a residual energy haunting, and he lived. Now, this was just really weird. I mean, this was a pretty much unfinished basement, but there was a full bathroom down there, which I never really understood ever. But anyway, his energy was right by the bathroom. And so you would walk down there was a section cut off for doing laundry. And if you walk down this little corridor that ended up in a cold room fruit cellar, you would walk right through the dead guy. And so it was very obvious to me where the dead guy was. I think the only one in the family that really didn't interact with the dead guy or recognize the dead guy was my mom, which was so weird because she, the washing machine was down there. She was too cheap to buy a dryer. I don't know why we didn't have a dryer. There were dryers available. We didn't have one. And she would, in the winter, hang the laundry on these long or laundry lines that went down this corridor. And so inevitably, she would have you go down there to remove the laundry and put it in a basket and bring it back up. And this would be me. How fast can I pull those clothes off of those clothes hooks? Because I didn't want to be down there with the dead guy, but then I would get in trouble because all the hooks would snap. but she never said anything about the dead guy, but we all knew about the dead guy. Hey, Mark. So Mark wants to know who's on the outside of the shower curtain. Oh, no, it's just like a spooky guy. I couldn't figure out what to do, so I didn't want to like put like a really spooky thing, but he's spooking enough to be spooky. Hey, Miss Tanya of Soul Expressions. Check out Soul Expressions on Facebook. It is the most awesome crystal store in Syracuse, New York. But Miss Tanya does live streams of crystals that you can buy. And so if you are out shopping for a new stone, I would highly recommend that you check out her live feed. And maybe she'll post when she's doing her next one, and I'll share that with everybody. Well, thank you all for coming and being here today. So I don't know if you all have any questions that you would like to toss out there so we can get this show rolling, or else I'm just going to keep telling my weird ghost stories because they're my stories, and always they have like a little bit of salt to them and are usually kind of funny. And I think the part that makes it be the funniest is after dealing with the dead guy, I grew up kind of afraid of ghosts, and dark rooms, and I'm not going in there unless you turn the light on, and I ended up, becoming a ghost hunter, which if I have time, I'll share how that all ended up happening. But it is not like my favorite thing to do, go walk into dark places that are creepy, abandoned houses by myself. Now, if there's other people or if there's power, I'll turn those on. Hey, Miss Jody, thank you for tuning in. I'm just sharing some ghosty stories with everybody. Okay, so Tanya said, so this is soulexpressions.com, well, not .com, on Facebook, Soul Expressions on Facebook. Her next live feed is going to be Friday night, not sure exactly what time due to work schedule, but check out her page, like her page, Soul Expressions, and it will keep you up to date of the next crystal sale thing. Okay, so before I get into my next story, Mark has a question. Do I really want to post that, Mark? Okay, I'm going to post it anyway because I need stuff to talk about. So Mark wants to know, is it exhausting being queen of the universe? Mark, no, not really. This is just how I naturally fly. And if that makes me the queen of the universe, I feel like I should have, He-Man, master of the universe. I should marry He-Man, master of the universe. That would be so cool. But no, that would not, no. I'll just say no. Okay. Oh, and now we have Vesta just showed up. Hey, Miss Vesta, if you have a question, anybody that's just tuned in, if you have a question, please post it in the chat box. Okay. So as I was talking about, I had this like intimate distaste, I'll say distaste, for going into places that are dark or spooky by myself. And I have a couple of stories about that. But anyway, after living in the house with the dead guy, I moved away and went to college. And the first opportunity that I had to move off campus, I moved into this house. Now, it was this old, well, actually, let's start here. So this was in Oswego, New York, which had the continental snowfall year after year after year. So 13 feet of snow was, the dead guy in the basement, Tanya. The continental snowfall was like 13 feet a year. And so this house was on the main street, about 5 blocks from the downtown area, right on the bus line. So the bus literally stopped right in front of my house. And so you could stand inside and wait for it to pull up and then run out and go get on the bus. It was ideal. It was a prime location, kind of, cool old house, 2 stories. Anyway, so I move into this house. And so downstairs, there was a business. They sold mausoleum. And I'll come back to that here in a second. And then upstairs was the unit that was the rental that I shared with three other roommates. And so I was downtown one day at a bar and somebody asked me where I lived. And I said, well, I live on the corner of Fifth and Bridge. And they looked at me and went, oh, the old funeral parlor. And I don't know that I can replicate the look of horror on my face because I had just moved in, signed a year lease, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And now I'm in this freaking haunted house. Well, I didn't know it was haunted then. But the other part was, so there was the mausoleum business downstairs. So if you're dyslexic, one of the things you do not possess are phonic skills. And so the ability to sound words out doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. And so I was telling somebody, yeah, there's a mausoleum business downstairs. And they looked at me and said, it's not mausoleum, which I thought was like linoleum. They sell floor coverings. It's not mausoleum. They sell mausoleums. And now it's like, oh my God. So now I live in this funeral parlor and they got mausoleums downstairs. So that was like a double awful place. And it didn't get any better from there at all. So you just have to picture this. Okay, picture this. You would open the front door and there was a little hallway, just a little landing area, and then two doors. And so one door went to the mausoleum business. And then the other door, when you opened it up, there was a stairwell that went up to our apartment. And so I had taken this little string of bells and latched it over the doorknob of the inside door, the one going to the stairs. Okay, now with that said, my roommates were all theater majors, and so they were gone a lot working on productions. And so I would be there and working on a homework. I was taking a bunch of design classes, so I'd be working on some project. And it would sound like the wind kind of blew the outside door. You would hear this noise. And then the bells, and so it's like, okay, so somebody came in and I expected somebody to either open the door and come upstairs or go into the mausoleum business, but neither would happen. And then I would hear the little bells chime. And then there would be this creaking up the stairs to the floor. And then I would turn the music up really loud and get really busy with my work. And this was long before I really understood or knew anything about energy work. And I have to tell you that if there was going to be a safe place to be on the planet, my bedroom was the safe place. I filled that room with light and I put up barricades. I mean, I didn't even know what energy work was, and I'm doing all of this stuff because it's like those ghosts were not coming in my room. But there would be nights that you would hear like this creaking down the hall and tapping on the walls. And then across the hall, my roommate, literally, I lived there for a year. And if I went into that room 5 times, that's a lot because that room was like mega, mega, mega creepy. We found out later that that room had been a viewing room, which was why it was so freaking creepy. But I couldn't navigate it. And if it was a bad night and there was a lot of activity going on, everybody ended up in my room because they also realized that my room was really the only safe room in the house. But that's because the ghosts weren't coming in ever. Okay. I don't know if you have any questions about that house. That house was actually really kind of fascinating. I've looked at some stuff in the insights about it or in hindsight, but I'm going to kind of take a little break here. If anybody has any questions, if you want to post them into the chat or into the comment thing. And Tanya, I don't know what you're doing. There's just like little symbol things showing up. Are you haunted? Do you have like a little like ghost thing going on there? I don't know. Anyway, okay, Still no questions, but you guys are supposed to ask questions. That's the purpose. Or have comments, and it doesn't have to be for a reading. It could just be questions about, what's going on, or about ghosts, or really anything. Because if I don't know the answer, I surely can make something up that sounds really credible. Okay. Um, I'm going to run out of stories if you guys don't talk to me. Okay. So, with my, discomfort interacting with ghosts, or being around ghosty, haunted, creepy stuff, many people wonder why I got into ghost hunting at all, or how I got into it. Okay, Jody has a question. Wait. Let's see. So she wants to know, did your roommates feel the energy right away like you? So the woman who lived across the hall, okay, so the woman who lived across the hall only lived in that, well, there were two people that lived in the really super creepy room. The first one couldn't deal with it and ended up moving out before the semester even ended. And then someone else moved in, and she was a pretty spiritual, metaphysical person. And so we would have a lot of conversations about it. And toward the end of the year, like a couple of weeks before we all moved out, and that was the agreement. It's like, we're going to do this, but it needs to be like, if there's any weird stuff that comes out of this, we want to be gone. And so we got a hold of a Ouija board, and we're going to do the Ouija board, and figuring if we stirred something up that we'd be moved out, and it wouldn't matter because none of us were staying in that unit. And so there were three of us. There was me, Pat, which was a guy, and then Valerie. And we would sit with the Ouija board, and two people would do the planchette, which is that little piece that moves around, and with their eyes closed, and one person would be the observer and write down letters or whatever that came up, with the thought that you couldn't be cheating. We were trying to be as scientific as possible, but we would ask permission. And so, it would start with, can Valerie play? And it would go, yes. Or, but it would kind of like go around. And then it's like, can Patrick play? And it would be like, yes. Can Rita play? No. And it was like, whoa. I mean, it was really fast. And so when they decided to do the Ouija board, I left because it did not want me there. And so they discovered that there were three ghosts, according to the Ouija board. There were three ghosts in the house. The one that was the most active, or that was in that one room, was this woman. In hindsight, what I came to realize is that our kitchen had a utility sink in it. And I think the footprint, the person walking down the hall and kind of tapping the wall, was the janitor or a maintenance guy who used that hallway to access the utility room, which was now our kitchen. And it was like his bucket or something that was hitting the wall, not him intentionally tapping the wall. But no, we were all or several of us were very aware of the energy. And then one of my roommates, Larry, didn't feel anything, didn't really care, wasn't scared, nothing. And what was interesting is, after we moved out of that house, as the story goes, or as I was told, the people that moved in asked Valerie, Patrick, I don't really know who, what's wrong with the hallway light? So when you came up the stairs, there was a light over the top of the stairs. Well, we never turned it off because it was too freaking spooky in there. And who wants to be in a dark, spooky house? Not me. If I have to go to the bathroom, I want that light on, and I don't want to have to walk to the end of the hallway to turn the light on so I can go to the bathroom. Wasn't happening. So we never turned the light off. Well, apparently they did, and the light would turn itself back on. Never happened to us because we never turned it off. And utilities were included, so we didn't care. Thank you, Jody. That was a great question. All right. I am ready for any new questions, you guys. Okay. All right. I am talking too much, but let me get a drink and I will continue on my little ghosty dissertation. Okay. So, what I was talking about a little earlier was how I got into ghost hunting in the first place. So, I went to the Berkeley Psychic Institute, which is located in California. I went to one of their satellite offices, schools, one of their satellite schools that wasn't in Berkeley. It was in Mountain View, California, which was in the more the South Bay area. It was in between San Jose and San Francisco, and studied there versus Berkeley, which was about 45 minutes to an hour away, and on the other side of the bay. Anyway, and so one of the things you could do, so I went for my first year and graduated their base program, and then you could take other stuff and participate in other things as part of their organization, because they like did all kinds of stuff. And so one of the things that they had was a house healing team. And so what would happen is a group of psychics would go into a house, kind of walk the house as if you were doing an investigation, and then give a reading to the homeowner. And that was just really interesting because you would find spirits there. You would find issues with the land, or, the property itself. There might be, like bad mojo on the property because it was like burial ground or whatever. I mean, there would be vortexes and there was just stuff. And what was cool about those was that there was actually stuff going on, versus what I have seen more contemporarily, where, people just want to know if they have ghosts in their house and they don't necessarily have any weird activity. But anyway, so we would do a reading and then we would do energy work on the house to seal vortexes, to fix whatever we could. And so that was my experience going into houses. So when I moved to Texas, I was contacted by Metroplex Paranormal Investigations because they were looking for a psychic to join their team. They had been working with a different psychic and he wasn't able to really work with them anymore. And so they were on the hunt for someone else. And so, I joined their team. And they would laugh at me because we would go into these houses, and if I had like any like spook factor going on for me, I would walk in the room and I would turn the light on, and they would always be like, "Why are you turning the light on?" And I'm like, "Because it's dark, and I can see the ghost whether the lights are on or the lights are off. But if the lights are on, I'm not scared. But if the lights are off, I'm scared." And thank you. Okay, let's see. Okay, so Jamie, I am going to throw something at you and then I'll answer Jody's question and then I'll come back to you so I can get more information. Yes, you can get a reading. Here's kind of how I play. It's like I like to have fairly specific questions. So if you just say, "Hey Lola, happy Halloween." So if you just say, "Can you tell me something?" No. I don't predict the future. And so I can look at probabilities of things, but, usually that is tied to a fairly specific question. If you want to ask about someone other than yourself, I need to know what the relationship is or have their name. Preferably both, but so the more specific you can be, the more specific I can be back to you. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to Jody's question, and then hopefully Jamie will have responded to my little guidance on reading stuff. Okay, So Jody, and so this is Jody's question. Bam. I really like using this StreamYard, and it seems to be working on Facebook today. Yay! Because you can post the questions, which is so nice. So the question is, why do some spirits hang around? And I brought this up a couple of weeks ago because someone asked a very similar question. But I'll readdress it because we are having the spooky Halloween special today. So there's two primary reasons why spirits hang around. And I'm going to put hang around in air quotes. The first reason is that they weren't good people. They were, and so they are afraid to take their next step, kind of go do the life review process, and accept the consequences of their life. So when you find hauntings, like active hauntings, usually the spirits that are involved are not really that great uh, emotionally, because if you don't want to go through the life review process because you've been a bad person in life, you're going to be a bad person as a ghost. And so that's one of the primary reasons why spirits hang around. So the second reason, and this is why I put it in the air quotes, which often gets overlooked when talking about ghosts. There's kind of this unspoken belief that when you die, you either go to heaven or you go to hell. But the way that it kind of comes off is that, okay, maybe not the hell part, because hopefully if they're in hell, they're going to stay there. But in the heaven part, they make it sound like it's a jail. And once you're in heaven, you can't go anywhere. And so many times there are spirits that come around that, have died. They've gone through the life review process and they are coming back to visit because there are things going on in your life and they want to participate with you in them. Okay, I didn't have this story written down, but this opens the door to yet another ghosty story. So I was married to one of my husbands, and I had just bought a house. I bought the house. He just lived in it. And we were moving in, and we literally only moved like one block over. So our process was fill up a bunch of boxes, load them in the car, take them over to the house, unload the boxes, repeat the next night. We gave ourselves plenty of time to just kind of do this slow rollover. And so I was in the house and I had boxes of kitchen stuff, dishes, pots and pans, that kind of thing. And I'm putting them away. And at that point in time, the dining room table was already in that unit, in the house. And I'm working and I kind of look over at the kitchen table and there's this man sitting at the table drinking coffee, smoking a cigarette. Don't forget that. And my impression of him, the vibe that he gave out, reminded me of my husband. And I knew that his dad was dead. And I'm like, wow, that might be his dad showing up. So he was like in and out. And I said, hey, if your dad was inside, so his family were ranching people. So I said, if your dad was inside, would he be sitting at the kitchen table, drinking a cup of coffee, smoking a cigarette? And then he went into this whole, well, they're ranchers and he was outside all the time and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I get it. But if he was inside, would he be sitting at the kitchen table drinking a cup of coffee? And he said, yeah, why? And I said, he's here. The life of living in my house. It's always fun. But it was interesting because he actually started communicating with his dad. It kind of opened the door for him to get some closure about, his family and his dad. So that was really cool. Okay, so let's see if I do that. All right, I haven't read this, so hopefully Lola didn't ask me anything too hard. Okay, how can I tell if my current pet is a reincarnation of a previous pet that was in my life? I believe that my current dog, Ladybird, is the reincarnation of my old Chihuahua. All right, Xenu, no phonics skills here. Is that possible? I mean, it is possible, but let me, Lola, I'm kind of getting a no on that. But I feel like this is going to sound weird, but that you've had other lives with that other Chihuahua. I feel like that dog has been around you multiple times, and not just as a dog. Actually, I get the impression that that dog was actually like a baby to you, and I feel like there was a lifetime where it actually wasn't one of your children, but it died really early in life and came back as a pet. Okay, so kind of on that story, because man, I've been doing this work such a long time. I got all kinds of stories. So speaking about pets and reincarnation, so my first dog was a poodle named Kiko, who was really super smart. And so while I was at the Berkeley Psychic Institute, they had this class called You and Your Pet. And you could bring your pet to this class. So me and Kiko, in her tie-dye shirt, because she always dressed, um, go to the class. And I was supposed to be in my class that night, but I didn't go because Kiko wanted to go to this pet class. And so I took her, and I kind of got in trouble, but I didn't care because I took Kiko to the pet class. And it was really kind of funny because, you could bring your pet, and there was only one other pet at this whole thing. And it was this kind of mean chihuahua named Peppy. And it makes me laugh because Kiko's favorite toy at that point in time was Peppy. So she got to go to the class, and she got to bring Peppy with her. And so they showed us how to do this like basic energy work thing on the dog, but no one wanted to work on Peppy because Peppy was kind of mean. And so pretty much the entire class worked on Kiko. And she was thrilled because she got all the attention. So that was good. But then, and this is kind of getting to your point, Lola, the instructor was talking about past lives and why some people would incarnate as a dog or possibly a cat, or some higher functioning animal in another lifetime. And her commentary was, that their death was very challenging for them, and they weren't able to kind of like pull themselves back together, I'm going to say emotionally, to incarnate in a physical body, but they did want to incarnate with people and around people. And this is where it was pretty fascinating because, all right, Kiko had just gotten like, a half an hour worth of healing from multiple people. And she was just laying on the ground, snoozing. And the woman started talking about this. And she stood up and stared at the instructor the entire time she talked about past life stuff. And then when she was done, she laid back down. And I really felt like it resonated with her that was her experience. But it wasn't, like from my past life, and the impression that I got, but, you do this work and sometimes you think, wow, that's just really weird. I just must be making it up. But that she had been in like World War I, World War II, I don't know, and was a fighter pilot and got shot down, and kind of didn't really pull it together to reincarnate in a physical form, because there was just a lot of damage and shock and all of that stuff. So, I'd like to hear, Lola, if you have a comment about uh, Xenu possibly having been a child of yours in a past life. I would like that. Okay. All right. Well, come on, guys. I'm really ready for questions. Do I have to beg? It's Halloween. The veil is thin. Ooh, look, I'm invisible. Anyway, so Okay, so Sandy, all right, so here's my other rule. I don't talk about dead people. If you have a ghost at your house, but I'm not a medium, and if I sit there and get something about people, then they want to come to my house, and I don't want dead people coming to my house. I will talk to you about anything but dead people, unless you're a ghost, which I think is really kind of interesting. That's separate, but yeah. Um, Okay, so Sandy, maybe a different question, but I would love to answer a question for you. Okay, so Jody again asks, is there a difference between ESP and what you do? Jody, if I knew you were going to ask that question, because I have my picture of the amazing Kreskin right behind me, and I was like, you should bring him over to the desk and you can show him on camera. But I'm like, well, what would I need that for? It's like, I would need it for this question. So the amazing Kreskin was a mentalist in the 70s, and he had ESP, extrasensory perception. And it was because of Kreskin that I got into this whole thing in the first place. And so that was before they used the word psychic to identify, using your intuition to provide readings or insights. And one of the things that I like to share with people is that, you know, there really isn't any difference between having an intuitive thought and having a psychic experience other than the word, you know, and the bad juju that comes along with saying psychic. Because it's interesting, I give a lot of presentations, and actually this weekend at the History Haunts and Legends Conference in spooky Jefferson, Texas, one of the top 10 most haunted cities in Texas, I am going to be giving a presentation on intuition and psychic abilities. And so one of the questions I ask is, how many people feel like they're intuitive? And historically, 3/4 of the room raises their hand, maybe more. But then I ask, well, how many people think that they're psychic? And I maybe get 3 or 4. Well, but most people don't recognize that intuition and psychic is the exact same thing. I think in most people's mind, they think intuition is just kind of occasional. I don't really know, and there's more definite, you know, because it's psychic and so it's more real. I don't really know. But, so if you feel like you have good intuition, like a mother's intuition, you may be psychic too. Hi, Miss Dee Dee. If you have any questions, the line is open and I am here answering them. And if that man of yours is there too, tell him I said, hey, hey. Um, okay. So, Standy, no other questions. And then there was also Jamie. You haven't really followed up with me either, so I'm still waiting to hear from you. Okay, so Lola is back. Do you think Lady Bird was part of my past lives or Jacoby? Um, I'm not really feeling it about Lady Bird. Um, and so this is kind of weird with Jacoby. All right, so I don't know what kind of animal that was, but I keep getting this picture of a horse. So I feel like I'm going to put a yes on that. But it wasn't like a dog cat kind of relationship. It was a relationship with a different kind of animal. And what's coming to mind is a horse. Okay. Jacoby is a chihuahua. Okay. But so it's Jacoby the Chihuahua horse. Um, so, yeah. So, Ms. Dee, you got any questions for me? Or I'm going to just go on with some other ghosty story here. All right, need more water. Okay, let's see. Where was I? I talked about that and that. See, I even made a list today, so I wouldn't be all over the place. Okay, so this was another funny story. See, all my ghost stories are really actually kind of funny. Okay, when I tell them, they're kind of funny. Um, so this was a number of years ago when I still had my radio show. And on Thanksgivings, I would do an open phone line. It was the only day of the year that I would do an open phone line. You know, every other show was a guest interview. And so if somebody wanted a reading, I didn't do them, period. Um, one show I was, okay, now the name is going to totally slip my mind. Okay, I can't remember his name, but I'll just like talk around that. You know, I was interviewing one of the Apollo astronauts. He was from Apollo 14, and he had was a metaphysical kind of guy. And I was talking, so the point was to talk to him about that. But his answers were just like so dry that I had gone through 20 questions, within like hardly any time. So, or I was moving through questions too fast and was like, okay, I need to slow this down. And so I spent like an hour talking to him about the moon landing and what it was like being on the moon and the solitude and all of this stuff. Because when do you get to talk to an astronaut that's been on the moon? And I talked to him about Apollo 13, the one that had the issue in the air, and he had worked on part of the rescue planning mission. And it was fascinating, and I could get him to talk about that. So that was good. um, but in the middle of this in-depth, heartfelt conversation, somebody called in and said, "Can I get a reading?" And I decided after that, no more readings, because it would be one thing if they called in and asked a question about the moon landing or the guy or anything particularly relevant. It would have been okay, but they just called in and wanted a reading, and I'm like, you're really interfering with my flow here. So I stopped doing them, and I would just save. Um, so my show aired on Thursday nights, and so it would be Thanksgiving Day, and I would still do my show, and and I would open up the phone lines as my way of giving thanks to my loyal listeners. And I figure if they're going to be listening on Thanksgiving, they can get a free reading. So this one lady called in, and she wanted to know what was going on with her house. She said, there's just all of this activity. And I was like, okay. And I kind of like closed my eyes, because if you ask me reading questions, that's what I do. And you would see that live in person. But I closed my eyes and I just kind of like tuned into what was going on. I said, well, I feel like there's running water going by your house, and that's just kind of making the super highway of spirits going by. And she confirmed that there was a stream that ran behind the back of her house. I'm like, okay. And then I kind of took another look, and this was where it got interesting. And I said, okay, so if I'm facing the front of your house and I go over 4 properties to the right, and I said, and I get the impression that these lots are big, like they're like an acre side lot, so there's some distance between you and your neighbor. But if I go over 4 houses and then go across the street, there's a giant vortex there. And she said, oh, that's where the cemetery is. And I'm like, oh, okay. I said, but where your house is it's on the edge of this vortex. It is well within the vortex. And so you're being affected by that energy of the vortex, kind of like opening doors and weird stuff. And she has the water. So she kind of got a double whammy going on. And so she wanted to know what she could do. And my suggestion was move, because there was no way that she could fix these very base and elemental disturbances that were going on her property. So she didn't like it. And if she couldn't come to some kind of terms with it, then that would really, in my opinion, be the only alternative. I mean, the vortex was huge. It would be impossible to seal that up. It's impossible to like stop a stream, especially if it goes past your neighbor's house. They kind of get a little pissy about that. Yeah. So I thought that was kind of funny, but it was like ding, ding, ding. Boy, that was a hit. Oh yeah, that's where the cemetery is. Oops. Anyway. Okay, come on, you guys. I know you're there. Dee Dee, no questions. Tanya, no questions. Vesta, no questions. Mr. Dog, Mr. Blind Dog, no questions. Even Liz doesn't have any questions. Man, I'm just gonna like pull people out of here. Mike doesn't have any questions. Yes, I see Mike out there paying attention. Okay, so see, it's like I'm working my way through this list. Okay, so we got like 15 minutes left, and so I'm going to tell my spookiest, or what I thought was one of the creepiest. All right, not physically creepy story, although it had definitely creep factor in it, but like weird creepy thing. Okay, wait. I got a question. All right, Lola, let's see. Do you think that burial versus cremation has an effect on your spirit? Huh. I mean, once you're out of the body, you're out of the body. I think it has a different effect on the people that will come and mourn. I mean, my experience has been there is more family energy in cemeteries and grief energy in cemeteries versus dead people hanging around in the cemetery. They're usually gone. Now, I did go and do an investigation in a funeral parlor. All right, not the one that I lived in, but this other one. And so in the little chapel thing that they had, where they would do the service, there was this guy, okay, dead invisible guy, sitting kind of in the back, and he was pissed off because a lot of people didn't come to his ceremony, and he didn't understand why, and he was just not happy. And so he was back there. And then we like were walking through the whole thing, and I went into the embalming room, like where they suck the blood out and put embalming fluid in. Okay, that was like a little gut wrenching. But I walk in there and I'm looking at the table, and there's kind of like this fast forward of different bodies going on the table, just like in a movie, preview of these bodies. And then all of a sudden this dead invisible guy sits up. That freaked me out. Totally freaked me out. I've never really looked at the whole cremation thing. Like I said, I don't think that it affects the spirit at all. So, wait. Okay, so Jody wants to know, I heard a spirit can attach to you at a cemetery. No, they might follow you home for a while, but then not attached to you like they're stuck to you forever. I mean, there's some pretty specific circumstances that need to all come into combination for one to attach to you on a more permanent basis. But it's not abnormal, where something might follow you home. And usually they'll hang out for a couple of days and then they'll take back off. Nothing going on here. So, yeah. Okay. Tanya, we're getting questions. Tanya, how are you seeing the ghost, physically or in your mind's eye? Great question. So when I'm working with ghosts, I always see them in my mind's eye. And the way that kind of appears, and this is getting a little old school for some people in here, there is at one point in time, this like overhead projector. and you could like put a piece of plastic down on there and it would project the image through the machine and up onto the wall. And you could take a second piece of this film and put it on top, and it wouldn't be the original image, it would be this modification to the image. And so when you're working clairvoyantly, which is clear sight, it always kind of works that way. It's not that I am seeing something like, ooh, wait, like that guy behind me floating around. It's I see the room as normal, but I've said this, and no, you cannot get these at Walmart. I put my ghost glasses on, which makes it so I can see that overlay of what is happening in the room. And so a lot of people say, well, they've never seen a ghost, but what they're looking for is something to appear in their physical eyes. And I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe that people who have seen ghosts actually see the overlay, and yeah, and they see the overlay, and just assume that they're seeing it with their physical eyes. But my guess is that's really not the case. Okay, well, now we're just picking up. Okay, we got a question from Bruce, or he said something. Hey, Bruce. Okay, let's see. Hi, Rita. We have talked about where I'm working. I feel more in touch when I'm out. All right, I can't read. It's behind the camera. When I'm out there, how did you feel when you were out in that part of the world? So I'm guessing based on the way that you phrase this, I will not say specifically even close to where it is. I think that everyone feels good when they get out in nature. It gives you a chance to discharge what's going on. When I have been in states like Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, one of the things that I found very interesting was a very heavy Native American presence. Not necessarily that I've like seen Indian ghosts hanging around, but just this very heavy feeling of them. There have been more than one occasion where I have been driving across that country and have actually seen wild bison, buffalo, I guess it would be buffalo, running across the prairies, which I always found fascinating, that there were these animal ghost spirits hanging around. So that was cool. So I'm not exactly sure where you want me to go with that, Bruce. And so I'm going to stop there. If you want to put in a follow-up, that would be great. But hey, wow, all kinds of good people. Okay. So, all right, I'm going to tell my spooky ghost story. I've saved this one for the end because it was kind of weird. So, while I was part of that ghost hunting team, we had gotten a call from, all right, so when we did an investigation, basically they gave me an address and I would show up. I never wanted to know what the person said, what they were feeling, what they thought. I didn't want to know. I just wanted to walk into the location cold, get what I got, and go from there. I didn't want them to say, "Oh, well, I have this," and have my impressions be contaminated by what they think they have, which may or may not be true. So, but in this case, I was told some information because the woman who was running the group wasn't sure she wanted to do the investigation or not. So the woman wasn't calling about ghosts, but she was calling because her daughter was writing these letters that kind of looked like runes, and she didn't really know what it was, and she wanted to know like if we could get anything from it. She didn't really know. She was just really reaching out. Well, the woman lived like a mile from me, 2 miles from me, so it was just an easy drive. So I'm like, sure, why not? And we go over there, and the woman takes us into the bathroom where this little girl had written these symbols down that literally looked like some ancient type language, which wasn't familiar to me, but I didn't want to discount that, it wasn't really some language that she was writing down. But what I found more interesting was that the girl had drew a pair of eyes on the countertop of the sink in the bathroom. And as I'm moving around the bathroom, because there were a couple of us in there and we were jockeying for position, the eyes were following me around. So now my creep factor is turned on because these eyes are following me. And now I'm kind of having this psychic conversation with the bathtub counter or the sink counter. And my feeling was, oh no, Jody, it gets creepier. So my feeling was that whoever this was a pirate. Now, where do you come up with that kind of weird crap? So the little girl is standing now at the door to the bathroom, and I just looked at her and I go, hey, so who's that? And she goes, a pirate. And I'm like, oh yeah, well, and I asked her a couple of questions, but after the second question, it was easy for me to tell that she went from her reality to some fantasy that she had created to go along with this pirate that lived in the bathroom sink countertop. So I thought my work was done. I kind of walked through the house, didn't really notice anything big, and I'm doing a report to the woman and talking about how the daughter had put this spirit into the bathroom sink, and kind of talking about that the daughter really had, I'm going to say power, that she was creating things, and she was six. And, was giving her some guidance on, what she could maybe do with her daughter, because she just seemed like she needed to work with someone to help her manage her abilities. And she goes, well, what about the doll? And I'm like, what doll? She goes, oh, it's in the first bedroom over there on the bookshelf. She goes, you didn't see it? I'm like, no, didn't catch it. She goes, oh no, go check out the doll. So I go, and I'm like, okay, whenever, go check out the doll. I walk into the bedroom. I look on the bookcase. There's sitting the doll, and the doll says, I've got a secret. I've got a secret. That was enough for me. I was out of there. Out of that room. And so I went back in, sit down. The woman goes, so what do you think? And I looked at her and I went, I've got a secret. And her eyes got like this big. And she goes, my daughter says that to me all the time. And then she'll take a fork and stab me in the leg. And I'm like, holy shit. So then I amplified my conversation with her about getting someone to work with her, because it just seemed like this girl could very easily move to the dark side and it would not be pretty at all. Yeah. Creepy, huh? But anyway, I'm looking at the time, man. I just yapped this whole time, but let's see if I can make this work. Alrighty. No, it's supposed to not do that. Just play. I will figure this out one of these days. There we go. Anyway, so even though I know all of you, I am just going to say this out loud. I'm Dr. Rita Louise. This has been Dr. Rita Live, our spooky Halloween special. If you'd like to schedule a private consultation, please visit my website, soulhealer.com. That's soulhealer.com. And don't forget to like me on Facebook and like Dr. Rita Louise on Facebook to keep up to date of our next show. I will be here next Monday opening the lines up to you, and I look forward to seeing and hearing from you then. So until next time, I'm Dr. Rita Louise. Be blessed.